He was the most feared man in New York City. Rafferty Corsetti didn't have a heart. He had a ledger of debts and a graveyard of enemies. No one dared to interrupt him, especially not when he was working. But on a rainy Tuesday in November, a burner phone that hadn't rung in 5 years suddenly lit up. The caller was a waitress named Harper, who thought she was dialing a deadbeat dad. She wasn't. She was calling the devil himself to tell him he had a son. And what happened next didn't just break the rules of the Mafia. It started a war. This is the story of the call that froze a killer. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and share it with someone who loves a good thriller. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another twisted tale of love, danger, and redemption. See you in the next one. The envelope on the kitchen table wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a timed bomb. Final notice. The words, red as blood, screamed straight into Harper Calloway's face the moment she stepped into her tiny studio apartment in Queens. The fluorescent light on the ceiling flickered like it was about to give up its last breath, throwing trembling streaks of brightness across walls stained with damp mold. Harper rubbed her eyes, trying to push back the heaviness, dragging her eyelids down. The greasy smell from Sal's diner still clung to her uniform like a second skin, soaking into her hair, into her pores, into the marrow of her bones. The wall clock said 3 in the morning. She'd just finished a double shift, 14 hours on swollen feet, carrying plates and serving a practiced smile to drunk customers for every thin, hard-won dollar of tips. Harper picked up the envelope, her hand shaking. She didn't need to open it to know what waited inside. An eviction notice. She was 2 months late. The landlord was out of patience. She dug into her wallet and counted the crumpled bills. $70. She needed $2,200 to cover her back rent. And Wyatt's asthma medicine had to be bought tomorrow, another $150. Altogether, she was short over $4,000, including the late fees. $4,000 she had no idea how to find. It was an impossible mountain for a waitress living on tips. Harper looked toward the corner of the room, where an old mattress lay directly on the cold wooden floor. Wyatt was asleep there, his small body curled beneath a thin blanket. 4 years old, with black curls and round, soft cheeks. His breathing wheezed gently in his sleep, a familiar sound Harper had learned to fear. Wyatt's asthma was getting worse. The bitter cold of November was weakening his lungs day by day. Something tightened around Harper's heart every time she heard that breath. She was 27, but in the mirror she saw a woman of 50. 4 years of raising her little nephew alone had drained her dry. Her parents died in a car accident when she was 16, leaving her and her sister Meredith stranded in the world. Meredith was everything Harper had. Sister, mother, her only friend. Then, 5 years ago, Meredith appeared on Harper's doorstep in the middle of the night, her belly swollen with pregnancy, her face pale with terror, blood running down her legs. She died giving birth to Wyatt, leaving Harper a newborn and a warning that crawled under the skin. Never look for his father, Harper. If you find him, you'll die. Harper sank onto the freezing floor, drew her knees to her chest, and held herself tight as if she could keep herself from breaking apart. If they were thrown out, they'd be on the street in November. New York's temperature was dropping below 10 degrees Celsius. Wyatt, with his fragile lungs, wouldn't survive even one night outside. She couldn't let that happen. She'd rather die than watch that child freeze to death on the pavement. Desperation has a strange way of smudging fear until it's barely there. Harper crawled to the battered old closet in the corner. She slipped her hand into a torn winter boot and pulled out a dusty shoebox. Meredith's box. The only thing her sister left behind besides Wyatt. Harper lifted the lid with trembling hands. Inside lay a silver heart necklace, a photograph of Meredith beaming on the deck of a luxurious yacht, and an old black Motorola phone. Meredith had called it the emergency line. She'd made Harper swear she would destroy it the moment Meredith was gone. But Harper couldn't. That phone was the only thread connecting her to Wyatt's father, the mysterious man Meredith never spoke about. Harper plugged the phone into a charger, an old one she'd bought at the pawn shop yesterday with the last $2 in her pocket. The screen lit up, casting a ghostly green glow in the pitch-dark room. The battery had been dead for years, but now it was coming back to life. Harper opened the contact list. There was only one number saved. No name, no details, just a single letter. R. Harper glanced at Wyatt sleeping, listened to the frightening rasp of his breath. She looked at the red envelope on the table. She looked down at the phone in her hand. Her heart beat like a trapped bird. thrashing against the bars of her ribs. Meredith's warning echoed in her mind. If you find him, you'll die. But if she did nothing, Wyatt would die first. Harper drew a deep breath, tears sliding down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Meredith. I can't let him freeze to death out there. Her finger hovered over the call button. Harper closed her eyes and pressed the call button. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest, so hard and fast she could hear it roaring in her ears. Her palms were soaked with sweat, slick against the worn plastic of the old phone. It rang. Once, twice. Each ring stretched on like an entire century. Harper almost hung up. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe she should stop before it was too late. Her finger had just brushed the end call button when the ringing abruptly stopped. Someone had answered, but there was no greeting. No question asking who was there. Only silence. A heavy, suffocating silence, as if the air on the other end had thickened into something solid. Harper could hear breathing. Slow. Even. Controlled. The sound sent a chill through her. It was the breathing of a predator listening to prey that had wandered blindly into its trap. Harper swallowed, her throat dry and tight. She had to speak. She had to say something. Hello? Her voice trembled, thin and painfully small. Still silence. The breathing remained steady. The man on the other end didn't say a word, as if he was waiting, assessing, deciding whether this prey was worth his time. Harper drew in a shaky breath and forced herself to continue. I don't know who you are. My name is Harper. Harper Calloway. I'm Meredith Calloway's sister. The breathing on the other end stopped, just like that. The silence sharpened, turned brittle with tension. Harper knew she'd struck something. Meredith's name had triggered a reaction in this unseen man. She rushed on, afraid of being cut off, afraid he'd hang up before she finished. I know Meredith ran from you. I know you might be dangerous, but Meredith is dead. A sharp inhale cut through the line, the sound of pure shock, the sound of a man hit square in the chest without warning. Harper's tears spilled over, sliding down her cheeks. She couldn't hold them back anymore. 4 years of endurance. 4 years alone. 4 years of carrying this secret in silence. It all surged up and broke free. She died 4 years ago, but before she died, she gave birth to a baby, a boy. His name is Wyatt. He's 4 years old. Silence stretched. 1 second. 2. 5. Harper thought the man had hung up, thought she was speaking into emptiness. Then at last, a voice. Low, deep, cold as ice. This wasn't the voice of a man dodging responsibility. This wasn't the voice of the weak figure Harper had imagined. This was the voice of someone who gave orders that ended lives. The voice of a man accustomed to obedience without repetition. Go on. Harper swallowed her tears and continued, her voice breaking apart. Wyatt has asthma. He needs medicine I can't afford. We're about to be evicted. I don't need money for myself. I just need you to help him. He's your son. If you have even a shred of humanity, please help him. She waited, her heart threatening to explode. He might hang up. He might not care. He might laugh and tell her it wasn't his problem. Harper had braced herself for every possibility, but she wasn't prepared for what came next. Where are you? The cold voice cut in. Harper hesitated. Queens. Astoria. Why are you asking? The exact address. She didn't understand why she obeyed. There was something in his voice that stripped away resistance. An invisible force. Absolute authority. Harper recited her apartment address, word by word, as if reading out her own death sentence. Listen carefully. His voice sliced through her. Stay inside the apartment. Don't leave. Don't call anyone else. Do you understand? Wait. Harper rushed to speak. Are you going to send money, or... I'm coming to get my son. The line went dead. The call ended. Harper stood there, still clutching the phone, her body rigid as stone. The blood in her veins seemed to freeze. His words echoed in her skull, tolling like a funeral bell. I'm coming to get my son. Not to help, not to meet, not to discuss. To get. As if Wyatt were property that belonged to him. As if Harper had no voice in the matter at all. She looked at Wyatt, still sleeping peacefully on the old mattress, unaware of the storm racing toward him. What had she done? What door had she opened? Meredith's warning rang through her mind like a prayer for the dead. If you find him, you'll die. Harper had just called the devil, and the devil was on his way. 30 minutes before that fateful call, In an abandoned meatpacking plant in the Bronx, the devil was at work. The clock read 2:30 in the morning. The machinery had long since fallen silent, leaving only the steady buzz of flickering fluorescent lights overhead. The smell of raw meat mixed with rusted iron filled the air, or maybe it was blood. In a back room like this, far from curious eyes, it was hard to tell the difference. Rafferty Corsetti stood there like a statue hewn from granite and shadow. 36 years old, 6 feet 2 inches tall, broad shoulders, back straight as a blade. His charcoal-tailored suit fit him flawlessly, worth more than most New Yorkers' cars. His black hair was slicked back, streaks of silver at his temples marking the pressure and responsibility that came with being Don of the Corsetti family. His eyes were the color of cold steel, stripped of warmth, holding only the measured calculation of a man who had seen too much death to fear anything anymore. A faint scar traced along his left jaw, a souvenir from a failed assassination 3 years earlier, when his enemies tried to kill him and paid for it with the extinction of their entire bloodline. In front of Raff sat a man tied to a metal chair, Petey Russo, known as the Weasel, a low-level enforcer in the organization. His face was swollen. Blood ran from his nose to his mouth, staining the torn remains of his shirt. Petey had committed the unforgivable sin. He'd sold Corsetti family information to the FBI in exchange for witness protection and a new house in Florida. He thought he was clever. He was wrong. Raff held a 9mm, fitted with a suppressor, though he hadn't used it yet. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need threats. His voice was calm, almost pleasant, like conversation at a cocktail party. That was what made it terrifying. "One last time, Petey. Who's your handler at the FBI?" Petey sobbed, tears mixing with blood. "I swear, Don, I don't know his name. They never told me their real names. Please, I've got a family. My wife's pregnant with our second child." Raff tilted his head slightly, as if considering the plea. "Everyone's got a family, Petey. That's why loyalty matters." Conrad Byrne stood guard by the door, silent as a fortress wall, 42 years old, built like a mountain, hands that had crushed men with nothing but brute strength. He'd been at Raff's side for 15 years, since Raff was 21 and stepping into the underworld. Conrad was his chief of security, his advisor, the brother Raff never had by blood. Now he stood without movement, long accustomed to scenes like this, feeling nothing but a dull patience. Raff raised the gun, his finger tightening on the trigger. Petey squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the final bullet. At that exact moment, the inner pocket of Raff's expensive suit vibrated. Raff froze. It wasn't his regular phone. This was the burner, the one he'd never thrown away in 5 years, the one he'd given to only one person in the world, Meredith. He pulled it out and watched the screen light up. The incoming call came from the very device connected to this phone, the one he'd placed in Meredith's hand the night they parted. His heart, the thing the entire New York underworld believed, had died long ago, slammed violently against his ribs. He flipped the phone open and brought it to his ear, and he waited. The voice that came through wasn't Meredith's. It was softer, trembling, laced with fear. A young woman trying to hold back panic. Harper Calloway introduced herself as Meredith's sister. Then she spoke 3 words that shattered Raff's world. "Meredith is dead." 3 words. Only 3. But they tore through him like a delayed explosion. Meredith, the only woman he'd ever truly loved, the only light in the endless dark of his life, was gone. 4 years. She'd been dead for 4 years and he hadn't known. He'd searched everywhere, turned the city upside down, but Meredith had been better at disappearing than he'd anticipated. Now he understood why. The voice continued. "She had a son. His name is Wyatt. He's 4 years old." Raff did the math. Meredith left 5 years ago. She'd been pregnant when she disappeared. She'd hidden his child. For 5 years he'd had a son in this world and hadn't known it. For the first time in 10 years, Raff's gun hand trembled. He lowered the 9mm, forgetting Petey's whimpering form entirely. He asked for the address, ordered the woman to stay put, then ended the call. Raff turned to Conrad, his face drained of color, in a way Conrad had never seen. "Kill him. Clean it up. Get the car. Now." Conrad had been with Raff long enough to know when not to ask questions. But he'd never seen his boss like this. Eyes as if someone had punched straight through his soul. "Boss, what happened?" Raff walked toward the door, his suit still immaculate, not a wrinkle out of place, but his eyes had changed. There was pain there, fury, and something Conrad didn't recognize because it had been so long since it had appeared on that stone-carved face. Hope. I've got family to bring home. The moment the call ended, Harper knew she'd made a terrible mistake. I'm coming to get my son. The words echoed through her mind like an alarm bell that wouldn't stop ringing. That wasn't the voice of a man offering help. It was the voice of someone coming to claim what he believed was his. Harper rushed to shove Wyatt's clothes into an old duffel bag, her hands shaking so badly she dropped everything twice. She hurried to the corner and gently shook the sleeping boy's shoulder. Wake up, sweetheart. We're going on an adventure. Wyatt rubbed his eyes, still heavy with sleep. What kind of adventure, Aunt Harper? What time is it? We've got to move fast, honey. Put your shoes on. Quickly. Harper scooped Wyatt into her arms, slung the bag over her shoulder, and ran to the door. She opened it and peered into the hallway. Darkness. The fluorescent lights flickered weakly, casting strips of pale light and shadow like something out of a horror film. No one there. The corridor was empty. Harper let out a shaky breath and stepped forward. Two enormous figures emerged from the stairwell. They were built like walking refrigerators, dressed in black suits, their eyes flat and empty. Harper screamed and stumbled backward into the apartment, trying to slam the door shut. It wouldn't close. A massive hand wedged into the frame, holding it open with effortless strength. Harper clutched Wyatt to her chest and retreated to the farthest corner, her back pressed against the cold wall. You're not going anywhere. The voice came from the darkness of the hallway, the same voice from the phone. Low, deep, cold as ice. In person, it was 100 times more terrifying. A shadow stepped through the doorway, and Harper finally saw the man behind that voice. Rafferty Corsetti was taller than she'd imagined. His tailored black suit was flawless, not a wrinkle in sight. Standing in her shabby apartment like a wolf that had wandered into a chicken coop, everything about him radiated danger. From his broad shoulders to his steel-gray eyes, he surveyed the room, taking in the mattress on the bare floor, the filthy kitchenette stacked with unwashed dishes, the red final notice envelope on the table. His jaw tightened, a muscle ticked. Fury was written plainly across his face. Then his gaze shifted to the corner, to Wyatt. The 4-year-old clung to Harper's neck, black curls tousled from sleep. The hair was unmistakably Raph's, but when Wyatt turned his head, his eyes were visible. Green as emeralds. Meredith's eyes. Raph froze. For the first time, Harper saw something in those eyes that wasn't a threat. Pain. Longing. A loss so vast it felt as if it might swallow the room whole. Aunt Harper, who's that man? Wyatt asked, his sleepy voice absent of fear. Children carry a frightening innocence. They don't recognize danger even when it's standing right in front of them. Raph lowered himself to one knee, slowly, carefully, as if afraid of startling the boy. I was a friend of your mother's. His voice was different now. Softer. The sharp edge dulled. Wyatt tilted his head, studying the stranger with curiosity. My mommy's in heaven. Aunt Harper said she's an angel now. Raph closed his eyes for a brief second. When he opened them again, something shimmered there. Something Harper never imagined a man like him could possess. The raw grief of someone who'd lost the most precious thing in his life without ever knowing it. Harper stepped forward, pushing Wyatt behind her, placing herself squarely between her nephew and this man. What do you want? Raph's cold mask snapped back into place. He rose to his full height, towering over her, his gaze unyielding. I already told you. My son, you don't have any rights, Harper shouted, despite the fear crawling down her spine. Rights? Raph took one step forward. Harper took one back. You kept him from me for 4 years and you're talking to me about rights? I didn't keep him from anyone. Meredith did. She was afraid of you. She was afraid of your world. A tense silence settled over the apartment. Raph stared at her, his eyes unreadable. You don't know anything about me. Harper lifted her chin, refusing to retreat again. I know enough. My sister said if I ever found you, I'd die. A pause stretched between them. Then Raph spoke, his voice low and dangerous. She wasn't wrong, but you made the call. You stepped into my world on your own. There's no going back now. Raph looked around the apartment again, his eyes lingering on every miserable detail. The stained mattress, the mold creeping up the walls, the bone deep cold from not being able to afford heat. My son lives in this slum? Harper clenched her jaw, humiliation burning her cheeks. I've done everything I can. It's not enough. Raph turned toward the door and gestured to his men. Both of you are coming with me. Now. No, Harper cried. That wasn't a request. Harper looked at the two massive guards blocking the exit, then at Raph's unyielding expression, then down at Wyatt clinging to her leg. His wide eyes finally filled with fear. She didn't have a choice. She knew it, but she wouldn't let him think she was easy prey. If you hurt him, she said slowly, her voice trembling but her gaze steady as she looked straight into Raph's eyes. I'll kill you. Raph paused mid-step. He turned his head slightly, studying her. For the first time, something flickered in his cold eyes. Not anger, not contempt, perhaps respect. You've got courage. Good, you're going to need it. The sleek black limousine came to a stop in front of the tallest building on the Upper East Side, a place where a single month's rent could likely have carried Harper through an entire lifetime. Wyatt had fallen asleep against her shoulder during the ride, his soft wheezing steady, and unaware that his world had just shifted forever. Conrad opened the door. Raph stepped out first without looking back, giving only a slight motion for Harper to follow. They entered a grand lobby with polished marble floors that gleamed beneath warm light, then moved into a private elevator that required a special keycard to operate. The elevator rose straight to the penthouse without stopping once. When the doors opened, Harper's mouth fell open. The apartment stretched across the entire floor. Ceilings soared high above them. Massive glass walls overlooked Central Park, now swallowed in darkness. Expensive furniture was arranged with deliberate elegance. Paintings that Harper was certain were originals hung on the walls. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over glossy hardwood floors. Everything was perfect, immaculate, cold, distant, the complete opposite of the slum apartment she'd just left behind, with its mattress on the floor and roaches in the kitchen. This is the fanciest prison I've ever seen, Harper said, her voice edged with bitterness. Raph didn't even turn around. This is home. Get used to it. Wyatt stirred on her shoulder. His eyes widened as he took in the space. Aunt Harper, it's huge. He wriggled down and ran across the room, touching everything, his face lit with wonder. Look, the television's bigger than our whole wall, and the couch is so soft. Raph stood watching the child explore, his expression unreadable, but something in his eyes softened as he witnessed his son discovering this new world for the first time. Raph pulled out his phone and made a call. 15 minutes later, a woman knocked at the door. Celeste Winters, 35 years old, brown hair neatly tied back, her professional face showing no surprise at being summoned at 4 a.m. She was clearly accustomed to this life, accustomed to serving powerful men who didn't operate by ordinary hours. Celeste examined Wyatt carefully while he sat still, too exhausted to protest. The asthma needs better management, she said evenly when she finished. Mild malnutrition, severe vitamin D deficiency. He needs consistent medical care and a proper diet. Harper felt heat rush to her face. She had tried. She had gone hungry so Wyatt could eat, but it hadn't been enough. She was never enough. Celeste wrote prescriptions and promised to return the next day with the necessary medications. She nodded respectfully to Raph and left without asking a single question about the strange woman and child who had appeared in the penthouse in the middle of the night. Wyatt had fallen asleep again on the expensive leather sofa, worn out by the long and terrifying night. Raph turned to Harper, his eyes cold once more. Malnourished. My son was starving. Harper exploded. 4 years of endurance. 4 years alone. 4 years of judgment from landlords and strangers and the world at large. It all tore loose. You think I wanted that, she shouted, no longer caring about keeping her voice down. I work 2 shifts every day, 14 hours on swollen feet for scraps of tips. I skip meals so he can eat. I sold my blood to buy his medicine. You don't get to stand in this palace and judge me when you weren't there for 4 years. Raph didn't interrupt. Harper stood there breathing hard, angry tears streaking down her face. She expected him to shout back, expected him to order his guards to throw her out. But he simply looked at her with an unreadable gaze. I wasn't there because I didn't know, he said at last, his voice low and steady. Do you think I'd have let my son live like that if I'd known he existed? Harper had no answer. She had spent years imagining this man as a monster. Meredith had fled to protect her child. Now, standing in front of him, she wasn't as certain. Here's my offer, Raph said. You stay here. You continue caring for Wyatt as you have. In return, you're protected. You're financially secure. And Wyatt gets everything he needs. Harper shook her head. I'm not selling my nephew. You misunderstand. Raph stepped closer, his voice dropping into something darker. You don't have the option to sell or refuse. The moment you called me, you stepped into my world. In this world, there are men who'd use you and Wyatt to hurt me. You walk out now, you're dead within a week. Not by my hand, by theirs. The blood drained from Harper's face. So Meredith had been right. She'd run because she feared this world. Raph was silent for a long moment. Then he lowered himself into an armchair across from her. For the first time, he looked tired. Not like a predator, just like a man carrying too much. You want to know about Meredith? He asked more quietly. I met her at an art gallery 5 years ago. She was standing in front of a painting of a sunrise. I asked her what she saw. She said hope, that every new day is a chance to begin again. He paused, his gaze distant. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. She was the only light in my darkness. Then one day she vanished. No explanation. No goodbye. I tore the city apart looking for her. But Meredith was better at disappearing than I realized. Harper's voice softened as her anger slowly dissolved. She was afraid. Afraid her son would grow up around guns and death. Afraid he'd become you. Raph nodded slowly, his eyes drifting to Wyatt asleep on the sofa. She was right to be afraid. My world is dangerous. But there's one thing Meredith didn't understand. He looked back at Harper, and now something fierce burned in his eyes. I'd rather die than let anyone lay a hand on my son. Harper studied him, and for the first time saw Rafferty Corsetti not as the monster she'd imagined, but as a man who'd lost the woman he loved, and only just discovered he had a son. A dangerous man, yes, but also a father. I'll stay, Harper said, for Wyatt, but I don't trust you. Raph nodded without offense. Good. Don't trust anyone in this world, not even me. Harper was shown to her own room, a space larger than her old apartment, with a white king-sized bed and a private marble bathroom. She lay down on the softest mattress she had ever touched, yet sleep wouldn't come. Her eyes stared out the window at the Manhattan skyline, glittering like a million diamonds scattered across black velvet. She had stepped into a gilded cage. The only question now was whether she would survive it, or be crushed inside. At the very hour, Harper lay awake in her lavish penthouse bedroom. Miles to the east in an aging estate on Long Island, a snake was stirring. The Benedetto mansion had once been a symbol of wealth and dominance, but now it carried the tired elegance of faded glory, like an aging aristocrat hiding wrinkles beneath heavy powder. The wallpaper with its classic patterns had begun to dull. The crystal chandeliers no longer sparkled as they once had. Old money, declining power, and a man full of bitterness sitting in the middle of it all. Salvatore Benedetto sat in his study, a dark room lit only by the fire crackling in the hearth. 55 years old, heavy-set. Thin silver hair slicked back to reveal a broad forehead dotted with sweat. His narrow eyes resembled a serpent's, always half-closed, as if calculating something cruel. He sipped whiskey from a crystal glass and stared into the flames, thinking of the years when the Benedetto family had ruled New York without challenge, before the Corsettis rose, before everything unraveled. The door opened, and a younger man stepped inside. Enzo Benedetto, 28, Sal's only son. Handsome, in a sharp and dangerous way. Black hair perfectly styled, expensive suit fitted to perfection. But where his father had patience, Enzo had hunger. His eyes burned with urgency, desperate to prove himself. "Father," Enzo said, barely containing his excitement. "We've got word from our man inside the Corsetti building." Sal didn't turn. "Speak." Corsetti brought a woman and a child into his penthouse tonight. The child's about 4 years old. Black hair. Sal set his glass down slowly. The movement held the quiet menace of a coiled snake preparing to strike. He turned toward his son, and something sparked in his narrow eyes that Enzo had never seen before. A child? Corsetti has a child? 2 years earlier, Rafferty Corsetti had humiliated Sal in front of the 5 families, exposing a failed smuggling deal, and proving Sal had deceived his own allies. That night, returning home in disgrace, Sal had sworn he would strip Corsetti of everything before killing him. "This is our chance." Enzo stepped closer, eyes blazing. "Kidnap the boy. Corsetti will drop to his knees and beg." Sal raised a hand to silence him. "No. A direct strike is suicide. Corsetti has soldiers, money, allies. He's at the height of his power. We can't face him head on." Enzo frowned, frustration tightening his face. "Then what?" We just sit here and watch him live in comfort? Sal smiled, but the expression never reached his cold eyes. We break him from the inside. He moved toward the window, gazing into the night. The woman, who is she? We're not sure yet, Enzo replied, but our source says she's not part of the life. She looks ordinary, perfect. Sal turned back, his smile now that of a man who had discovered his enemy's fatal weakness. Ordinary people are afraid. Make her afraid and she'll run. When she runs, she'll take the boy with her. And then, he snapped his fingers softly. No more Corsetti protection. Sal pulled out his phone and made a call. Find the number of the girl Corsetti brought home. I want it within the hour. He ended the call and faced Enzo again. Go see Ricci at the precinct. I want everything on her. Name, past, weaknesses, every detail. Enzo nodded and left, the door clicking shut behind him. Sal turned back to the fire, its reflection dancing in his eyes. Corsetti, he murmured to the flames, you may have an army, but tonight you showed me your heart. And hearts, he slowly closed his fist, are easy to crush. Back in the penthouse on the Upper East Side, Harper still couldn't sleep. She lay on the softest bed she'd ever known, yet her mind wouldn't slow. Everything had changed too fast. Just yesterday morning, she was a broke waitress worried about rent. Now she was lying in the penthouse of the most powerful mafia boss in New York. Suddenly, the new phone Raph had given her vibrated on the nightstand. Harper picked it up. Unknown number. A message. She opened it, and the blood in her veins seemed to freeze. You think you're safe in that golden cage. He couldn't protect Meredith. You'll be next. Run while you still can. Harper shot upright, her heart slamming wildly in her chest. Who was this? How did they have her number? She'd had this phone for only a few hours. No one knew it except Raph. Her first instinct was to run to him, to show him the message. But she stopped before her feet touched the floor. If she told him, he'd see weakness. He'd tighten his control. He'd use her fear as justification to lock her down further, to strip away what little freedom she had left. Harper had survived her entire life on her own. No one had ever saved her. She wasn't about to start depending on someone now. She deleted the message, but the words remained carved into her mind. Harper rose and walked to the window, staring out at Manhattan glittering like a field of restless stars. Somewhere out there, an enemy was watching. An enemy knew where she was. An enemy had her number. She wrapped her arms around herself, trembling despite the warmth of the room. Meredith had been right. This world wanted to swallow her whole, but Wyatt was sleeping in the next room, unaware of the danger closing in. For Wyatt, she couldn't fall apart. For Wyatt, she would fight. A week passed in the penthouse, like a strange dream Harper couldn't decide was a nightmare or a miracle. Wyatt was monitored daily by Dr. Celeste. His asthma medication was consistent. His meals were balanced and plentiful. And for the first time in 4 years, the sound of his breathing no longer carried that thin, frightening wheeze that used to haunt the nights. But the threatening message from that first evening never loosened its grip. The words burned in her mind whenever she closed her eyes. She didn't tell anyone. She carried it alone, the way she always had. Then one morning, Raph walked into the dining room while Harper was feeding Wyatt breakfast and made an announcement that nearly caused her to drop the spoon. There's a gathering of the 5 families this weekend. You and Wyatt are coming with me. Harper stared at him as if he'd grown another head. A mafia party? Have you lost your mind? You're bringing Wyatt into that den? Raph's expression didn't shift. I'm announcing him as my heir. That's how I protect him. Protect? Harper rose to her feet, anger sharpening her voice. By painting a target on his back? Raph stepped closer, his presence steady and commanding. Listen carefully. In this world, secrecy is weakness. They already know I have a child. Rumors move faster than you think. If I hide him, they'll assume I'm ashamed. They'll assume he's insignificant. They'll assume he's a weakness to exploit. But if I declare him in front of everyone, then every man in that room understands that touching my son is an act of war against the Corsetti family. Harper wanted to argue, but in this twisted world, his logic carried a brutal kind of sense. The next day she was taken shopping. Not to the department stores she used to pass with quiet longing, but to private boutiques where staff addressed her as ma'am and offered champagne while she tried on gowns. She stepped into a deep blue evening dress that flowed over her skin like water. It cost more than a year's rent in her old apartment. The luxury felt foreign, like she was playing a role that didn't belong to her. Conrad waited outside the fitting room, his voice calm and practical. In this world, appearance is armor. Look weak and they attack. Look strong and they hesitate. On the drive back, he briefed her on the families who would attend. Benedetto, stay away. Open enemies of Corsetti. Caruso, neutral. Don't trust but don't provoke. Romano, allies, friendly but still cautious. Harper nodded, trying to memorize every name like she was studying for the most important test of her life. The night of the gathering arrived faster than she wanted. The Plaza Hotel greeted them with a ballroom more extravagant than anything Harper had ever imagined. Crystal chandeliers hung from towering ceilings, champagne flowed endlessly. Men in tailored suits, and women glittering with diamonds gathered in clusters, smiling and conversing. But beneath the glitter, Harper sensed something else. The scent of danger, calculating eyes, smiles that concealed knives. She walked beside Raph, the blue gown fitting her perfectly. Her hair swept up to reveal Meredith's silver heart necklace resting at her throat. The moment they entered, she felt the weight of every gaze. Whispers rippled through the room. Who is she? Where did she come from? Corsetti's new woman. She doesn't look like she belongs to the life. Raph's hand settled at the small of her back, both possessive and protective. Don't leave my sight, he murmured. I'm not an object, Harper replied coolly. He didn't look at her. In their eyes, you're prey. Don't give them a chance to bite. Then he appeared. Salvatore Benedetto approached like a shark catching the scent of blood. His heavy body strained against a white suit. His smile was wide and hollow. Corsetti. Long time no see. His voice dripped with false sweetness. Sal's eyes traveled over Harper slowly, assessing, dismissing. And who is this? Your newest companion? That's none of your concern, Raph answered evenly. Sal gave a short laugh. I heard she's a waitress, from some cheap diner in Queens. He raised his voice just enough for others to hear. Have your standards fallen that far, Corsetti? Soft laughter stirred nearby. Harper felt heat flood her face, humiliation rising like a slap delivered in public. Raph was about to respond, but Harper stepped forward first. She didn't know where the courage came from. Maybe from 4 years of being knocked down and forced to stand again. Maybe from anger that had waited too long. She met Sal's narrow eyes without blinking. Yes, I'm a waitress. I work 14 hours a day to feed my family. I don't have inherited money. I don't have a father clearing the path for me. Sal smirked, preparing to interrupt. Touching, but I'm not finished. Her voice cut through his. I may come from a cheap diner, but at least I don't hide behind insults because I lack the courage to confront someone directly. The ballroom fell silent. No whispers, no laughter. Just the heavy quiet of disbelief. She continued, each word precise. You want to know who I am? I'm the one who raised Corsetti's son for 4 years when no one else did. 4 years alone. What did you accomplish in 4 years besides counting your money and your enemies? Sal's face paled. His fists tightened. But he couldn't react. Not here. Not in front of every family. You've got fire, he said slowly, venom lacing his tone. Let's hope it doesn't burn you. He turned away. Enzo followed, casting Harper a look of raw hatred before disappearing into the crowd. Harper faced Raph, bracing for reprimand. Instead, she found something unexpected in his eyes. Not anger, not irritation, not condescension. Respect. Real and unmistakable. You just declared war on Salvatore Benedetto, Raph said quietly. He declared it first. I just answered. Something flickered at the corner of Raph's mouth, almost a smile. Later, Raph led Harper and Wyatt onto a small stage at the end of the ballroom. Wyatt, dressed in a tiny suit, clung to Harper's hand, wide-eyed under the bright lights. I present my son, Raph's voice carried across the room. Wyatt Corsetti, heir to the Corsetti family. Murmurs erupted like disturbed bees. Calculations flashed in every direction. Polite congratulations masked silent strategies. And across the room, Sal Benedetto stood motionless, his narrow eyes fixed on Wyatt like a serpent studying its prey. On the drive home, Wyatt fell asleep between them, his small head resting against Harper's shoulder, breathing peaceful and steady. Harper watched the city lights streak past the window in blurred ribbons. Benedetto won't let this go, she said quietly. No, Raph replied, but now he knows you're not easy prey. Their eyes met in the darkness of the car, and in that moment Harper realized something had shifted. She was no longer just Wyatt's caretaker. In Raph's eyes, she had become something else. And perhaps, in her own eyes too. 2 days after the party, life inside the penthouse began to settle into a rhythm Harper hadn't expected. In the mornings, she woke early to make breakfast for Wyatt, even though Raph's private chef was always ready to prepare anything they desired. She preferred doing it herself. She liked watching Wyatt eat the food she made. She liked the fragile illusion of normalcy in a world that was anything but normal. In the afternoons, she taught Wyatt to read. She was surprised to discover how quick he was, how his mind seemed to absorb words with astonishing ease. Raph left during the day for work Harper didn't ask about, and he didn't explain. But he always returned in time for dinner. The three of them sat together at the long dining table. Wyatt chattered about what he had learned. Raph listened with an attentiveness Harper never imagined a Mafia Don capable of. It was strange, almost like a family. That afternoon began like any other. Harper stood in the kitchen with Wyatt, making cookies from her mother's old recipe. Flour dusted Wyatt's small hands and cheeks. He laughed as he tried to knead the dough the way Harper showed him. Nancy, the 50-year-old nanny Conrad had hired, watched nearby with a gentle smile. For a fleeting moment, the world felt safe. Harper almost forgot where she was and what shadows lingered outside those walls. She realized they were out of flour. "Wait here, sweetheart. I'll grab more." She stepped into the pantry. 2 minutes. That was all. When she came back, Wyatt was no longer at the table. Her eyes darted around. Her heart began to pound. "Nancy, where's Wyatt?" "He just ran out to the balcony to look at a bird," Nancy called from the living room. There was a pretty one on the railing. Harper ran toward the balcony and her heart nearly stopped. It was empty. No Wyatt, no bird. Only the November wind sweeping across bare stone. "Wyatt!" Her scream tore through the apartment. She rushed through the penthouse like someone unhinged, opening every door, searching every corner, shouting his name until her throat burned raw. Nancy called security. Conrad arrived within minutes, his face draining of color as Harper choked out that Wyatt was gone. 5 minutes passed. 5 eternal minutes where Harper felt herself dying breath by breath. Then she heard laughter. Wyatt's laughter. Clear and carefree. It came from the far balcony on the opposite side of the apartment. Harper ran and found him standing near the railing, waving toward the neighboring building, smiling brightly. "Aunt Harper!" He turned to her. "I was talking to a nice man." She lunged forward and pulled him into her arms so tightly he squeaked in protest. "What man? Where?" Wyatt pointed toward the roof of the adjacent building. "He was standing up there. He asked my name. He asked what I like. He even gave me candy." Harper looked where Wyatt pointed. No one was there. The rooftop stood empty, dotted only with vents and antennas. But when her gaze dropped to the balcony floor, her blood froze. A single red candy rested against the white stone, bright as a drop of blood. Raph returned the moment Conrad called him, arriving within 15 minutes. He reviewed the security footage with eyes sharpened to a blade's edge. On the screen, a man dressed as a maintenance worker appeared on the neighboring rooftop, less than 20 meters away. He stood there for at least 5 minutes. Long enough to speak to Wyatt, long enough to toss the candy, long enough to deliver a message. Conrad confirmed with the neighboring building management. There was no scheduled maintenance, no authorized worker on the roof. The man was an outsider, and he had come close enough to speak to Raph's son. For the first time, Harper witnessed Rafferty Corsetti's true rage. Not the controlled coldness she had grown used to. This was fire, raw and volcanic. He crushed a crystal glass in his hand without noticing the blood running from the cut. His voice thundered through the room as he roared into his phone, threatening to dismiss the entire security team. 10 guards, and some bastard gets within reach of my son in 2 minutes. What the hell are you people doing? Harper stepped back, holding Wyatt close as he began to cry at the sound of his father's fury. She covered his ears, shielding him from the chaos, though she couldn't shield herself from the truth pressing down on her chest. She understood exactly what this was. Not a kidnapping attempt. A message. From Benedetto. "We can reach your son whenever we choose." It was psychological warfare. A warning. A reminder that no height of glass and steel, no number of armed guards, made them untouchable. And then another realization struck her, colder than anything else. The threatening message from the first night. The one she had deleted. The one she had kept to herself. If she had told Raph, maybe security would have tightened sooner. Maybe today wouldn't have happened. Maybe Wyatt wouldn't have been approached by a stranger on the balcony of what was supposed to be the safest home in the city. This was her fault. Her silence had placed Wyatt in danger. Later, when Raph's fury had cooled, when Wyatt had been tucked into bed by Nancy, when security had doubled, and every vulnerability re-examined, Harper stood outside Raph's study. Through the slightly open door, she saw him seated alone, head bowed, hands clasped together. No longer a predator, just a father who had nearly lost his child. Harper's fingers curled at her sides, nails pressing into her palms. She had to tell him about the message, about keeping it from him, about everything. But how would he react? Would he send her away? Decide she couldn't be trusted? Separate her from Wyatt? She drew a long breath, searching for courage she wasn't sure she possessed. Then she pushed the door open and stepped inside. "Raph," she said, her voice trembling but steady with resolve. "There's something I need to tell you." Raph lifted his head when Harper stepped inside, his eyes tired yet still sharp. He said nothing, only watched her and waited. Harper felt as if she were standing before a court of law, ready to receive a sentence for her own wrongdoing. She took the phone from her pocket, opened it, and handed it to him. She had not truly deleted the message. She had only moved it into another folder, partly because instinct told her to keep evidence, partly because she knew that sooner or later the truth would have to be spoken. "I received this on the first night here," Harper said, her voice quiet but steady. "I didn't tell you." Raph took the phone and read the message. "You think you're safe in that golden cage. He couldn't protect Meredith. You'll be next. Run while you still can." His face darkened, his jaw tightening so hard she could see the tendon rise in his neck. "Why did you hide this from me?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. Harper swallowed and searched for the right words. "I've handled everything alone my whole life. No one ever helped me. When my parents died, I was 16 and had to stand on my own. When Meredith died, I was alone with a newborn and not a dollar to my name. I'm used to it, used to not asking anyone for anything, used to not leaning on anyone." She paused, drawing in a deep breath before saying the hardest part. "And I was afraid. Afraid you would think I was weak. Afraid you would take Wyatt and send me away because I was a burden. I have nothing. Do you understand? Wyatt is all I have." Raph was silent long enough for Harper to imagine exactly how he might dismiss her from his life. Then he spoke, and the anger was gone, replaced by weariness. "You think I would throw out the woman who raised my son for 4 years over a threatening message?" Harper could not answer. She did not know what to believe about this man, whether he was good or cruel, whether he would change his mind tomorrow. Raph exhaled slowly, set the phone on the desk, and rose to his feet. "In this world, secrets kill," he said, stepping closer. "If you hide things from me, I can't protect you. I don't know where the danger is coming from. I don't know what to prepare for. Do you understand that?" Harper lowered her head, shame pressing heavily against her chest. "I do. I'm sorry." "Listen to me," Raph said, and something in his tone softened in a way she had not expected. "You're not alone anymore. You have us." Her eyes stung as she looked up at him. "You don't hate me. I hate that you kept this from me," he answered plainly. "But I understand why you did it. You've survived on your own too long. Habits like that don't disappear overnight." He returned to his desk, picked up the phone, and called Conrad. His orders were short and precise, demanding the source of the message be traced. 20 minutes later, Conrad called back. The phone had been purchased with cash at a shop in the Bronx, territory controlled by the Benedetto family. It was not surprising, but now they had confirmation. Sal stood behind it all, the threatening message, the stranger on the rooftop, the red candy on the balcony. That evening, despite everything, the three of them still sat down to dinner together. No guards in the dining room, no business tension hanging in the air, just plates of pasta prepared by the chef, candlelight flickering softly, and Wyatt's laughter as he described the new teddy bear Nancy had bought him. Harper looked around the table. She watched Raph listening to his son with complete focus. She watched Wyatt, healthy and happy, and she realized it was the first time she had eaten dinner as part of a family since her parents died. 11 years. 11 years without this feeling. After dinner, Wyatt ran off and returned with a sheet of paper clutched in his hands. "I made this for Daddy and Aunt Harper," he announced proudly. Harper took the drawing and her throat tightened. 3 figures holding hands. One tall with dark hair, one with long brown hair, one small in the middle. Above them, in uneven block letters, Wyatt had written "My Family." misspelled, but heartbreakingly clear. Harper looked at Raph, and he looked back at her. Neither of them knew what to say. Then Wyatt spoke, his voice open and curious. "Uncle Raph, you're my daddy, right?" The room went still. Harper held her breath. Raph froze. "Who told you that?" he asked carefully. "No one," Wyatt replied, tilting his head as if it were obvious. "But your eyes look like mine in the mirror. And Aunt Harper said my daddy went far away. But you're not far away. You're here. You eat dinner with me every day. You read to me. You get worried when I'm sick. Daddies do that." Raph glanced at Harper, a silent question in his eyes. She gave a small nod. It was time. Raph knelt down to his son's level, just as he had on the first night they met. "Yes, Wyatt," he said, and his voice trembled faintly. "I'm your father. I just found you a little late." Wyatt studied him for a second, Meredith's green eyes searching Raph's gray ones. Then he threw his arms around his father's neck and held on tight, as if afraid Raph might vanish. "I knew it," Wyatt whispered against his shoulder. "I knew it." Harper turned away, wiping the tears that slipped down her cheeks. She saw Raph holding his son, and the eyes of the most feared man in New York were wet. "You won't go far away again, right?" Wyatt asked in a small, hopeful voice. "Never," Raph said, holding him closer. "I promise." Later that night, after Wyatt had fallen asleep in his own room with his new teddy bear tucked beneath his arm, Harper stood by the window looking out over Manhattan. Sleep would not come. Her mind circled everything that had happened. She heard footsteps, and knew Raph had come to stand beside her, without needing to turn. They stood together in silence, watching the city lights shimmer like a field of fallen stars. "Wyatt loves you," Harper said at last. "And I would die to protect him," Raph replied. Silence stretched between them. Then his voice lowered so much she almost did not hear it. "You too. I will protect you too." Harper turned to look at him. He looked back. They did not kiss. They did not touch. But something in the air between them shifted, an invisible thread drawing them closer, slowly, inch by inch. Raph lifted his head when Conrad entered the study the next morning. Tension carved across Conrad's face in a way Harper had already learned meant trouble. She was seated on the sofa reading to Wyatt, but the moment she saw Conrad's expression, she knew she needed to hear this. Raph gestured for her to remain. "Enzo Benedetto is gathering his men," Conrad reported, his voice low and grave. "Our people say he's buying weapons, more than usual. It looks like Sal is losing control of his son. Enzo wants to act on his own." Raph leaned forward, gray eyes narrowing. "A hot-headed son is more dangerous than a calculating father. Sal knows how to wait. Enzo doesn't. He'll do something foolish soon." Conrad nodded. "We should prepare. Strike before we're struck." Raph fell silent, weighing the options. Then he turned to Harper, and she saw the decision in his eyes before he spoke it. "Harper, I want you and Wyatt at the lodge in Vermont. It's safer there." "No," she answered immediately. Raph frowned. "This isn't the time to be stubborn. Things are about to turn violent." Harper stood, set Wyatt gently down, and told him to go find Nancy. When he was gone, she faced Raph, her eyes blazing with resolve. "I won't run. I've spent my whole life running. From debt, from my past, from the memories of my parents and Meredith, from every painful thing. I'm tired of running. Not anymore." "Wyatt needs to be safe," Raph countered. "Wyatt needs to see me strong," she replied, "not frightened and fleeing. If I teach him that danger means you run, he'll spend his life running. I won't have my child live that way." "My child." Raph repeated the words softly, and she realized what she had said. She didn't correct herself. She didn't want to. Silence stretched between them. Then Harper spoke again, calmer but unyielding. "Teach me." "Teach you what?" "How to protect myself. How to shoot. Whatever it takes so I'm not a burden. If I can defend myself and Wyatt, you won't have to worry about us while you deal with Benedetto." Raph studied her for a long moment, measuring her determination. She didn't blink. At last he nodded. "Fine. Basement." The building's lower level housed a private shooting range, something that no longer surprised her after everything she had seen. He placed a 9mm in her hands. It felt heavier than she expected. "Stance first," Raph instructed, standing behind her. Feet shoulder-width apart. Right hand on the grip, left hand supporting. Aim with your right eye. Squeeze the trigger slowly. Don't jerk. Harper followed his guidance and fired. The shot missed wide. She tried again. Still off target. Frustration rose in her chest. Raph stepped closer, directly behind her. His hand adjusted her shoulder. His other hand settled at her waist, drawing her subtly into alignment. His breath brushed the back of her neck, and her heart began to race for reasons that had nothing to do with the weapon in her hand. Steady breathing, he murmured near her ear. Aim. Fire. She pulled the trigger. The bullet struck the target. Good, Raph said, his voice rougher now. You learn fast. They practiced for another hour before returning upstairs. In the hallway near the elevator, Harper noticed Conrad standing off to the side, speaking urgently into his phone. When he saw them, he ended the call abruptly. For a flicker of a second, something crossed his face. Guilt, or perhaps alarm. Harper caught Raph's hand, stopping him. Conrad, she said quietly once they were out of earshot. Do you trust him? Raph looked at her, then toward Conrad walking away. Why? He hung up fast when he saw us. It looked suspicious. Raph considered her words, then shook his head. Conrad has stood beside me for 15 years. He saved my life 3 times. The first when I was 23, ambushed in an alley in Brooklyn. The second during the assassination attempt 3 years ago. The scar on my jaw exists because he pushed me out of the line of fire. If I don't trust Conrad, I trust no one. Harper nodded, yet the unease in her chest refused to quiet. Something felt wrong. She just couldn't name it. That night, after Wyatt had fallen asleep, Harper lay staring at the ceiling, unable to rest. A soft knock came at her door. She slipped on a robe and opened it. Raph stood there, still dressed, as though sleep had eluded him too. Can't sleep? He asked. Neither can I, she answered, stepping aside. Raph moved to the window and looked out at the city. Tomorrow I lead my men against Benedetto. We end this, once and for all. Is it dangerous? She asked, though she already knew. It always is. She joined him at the window. You have to come back. Wyatt needs you. Raph turned, his eyes deep in the dim light. And you? Do you need me? Silence lingered. She had told herself she was here only for Wyatt. Only for him. But was that still true? She began, but the words failed her. Raph lifted his hand and cupped her cheek gently, as though she were made of glass. Harper, he said softly, if anything happens to you, I can't lose another person. I lost Meredith. I lost 4 years with my son. I can't lose more, especially not you. Raph. He kissed her. Not tentative, not accidental. It was a real kiss, deep and certain, filled with everything left unsaid. For a heartbeat she was startled. Then she answered it, her hand resting against his chest, feeling the strong rhythm beneath the fabric. When they parted, they were both breathing harder. When I come back, Raph said, his forehead resting against hers, this will be finished. We'll start again, the right way. You promise, she whispered. I promise. He kissed her forehead and left, the door closing softly behind him. Harper stood alone, fingers brushing her lips, her heart unsteady. She prayed it would not be the last time she saw him. That night, the Benedetto estate lay swallowed in darkness as Raph's convoy approached. 20 men, the most skilled shooters of the Corsetti family, moved like ghosts across the vast garden. Raph led the way with Conrad at his side, weapon loaded and ready in his hand. They breached through the rear gate and disabled the security system in less than 30 seconds. Raph had studied the blueprints of this mansion for 2 days, memorizing every corridor, every blind corner, every emergency exit. The firefight erupted the moment they entered the ground floor. Gunshots cracked through marble halls. Glass shattered. Men shouted. Raph fought with the ruthless precision of someone long accustomed to killing. Every bullet deliberate. Every movement final. This was his element, the world he had been forged to rule. Benedetto men fell one by one, yet something felt wrong. Too few. Sal's defenses were lighter than intelligence had promised. Raph stormed into Sal's study, the room where the Benedetto patriarch was said to remain at this hour. The oak door burst inward beneath his kick. The room stood empty. No Sal, no Enzo. Only a mahogany desk and a glowing computer screen. Raph stepped closer, and the blood in his veins seemed to freeze. The monitor displayed live security footage, not from the Benedetto estate. From his own penthouse, he saw the familiar hallway, the familiar living room, and black-clad figures moving through it. What the hell? He whispered, the words catching in his throat. Conrad rushed in, his face drained. "Boss, it's a trap. The main Benedetto force isn't here. We found only a skeleton crew guarding the place." Raff yanked out his phone and called the penthouse. 1 ring. 2, 3. No answer. He called again. Nothing. His heart slammed violently, a fear he had thought long buried rising like a tidal wave. "Harper!" he shouted, already running. "Harper!" Wyatt. At that same moment in the Upper East Side penthouse, Harper sat on Wyatt's bed reading a story about a brave little rabbit. Wyatt was drifting toward sleep, green eyes heavy, breathing steady. Harper kissed his forehead and began to rise. The lights went out. The entire penthouse plunged into total darkness. Harper sprang to her feet, survival instinct igniting instantly. Then she heard it. Gunfire from below. A guard screaming. Glass breaking. Footsteps pounding up the stairs. She grabbed Wyatt and pulled him upright. "Wake up, sweetheart. Now." Wyatt jolted awake, terrified by the darkness and the noise. "Aunt Harper, what's happening? I'm scared." "It's okay," she said, far calmer than she felt. "I'm here. I'll protect you. We have to move. Right now." She lifted him into her arms and ran. The hallway was black, except for the faint flicker of emergency lights. The gunshots were closer now, the shouting louder. Harper ran toward the panic room Raff had shown her, the reinforced safe room designed to withstand siege. Behind her, she heard a voice shout with manic excitement. "Find the kid." Enzo Benedetto's voice. "Find Corsetti's brat." Harper ran faster, lungs burning. Wyatt sobbed against her shoulder, trembling violently. She reached the steel door at last. Her hands shook as she entered the code Raff had given her. Error. She tried again. Error. She forced herself to breathe and entered it a 3rd time. The lock clicked open. She shoved Wyatt inside and followed, slamming the heavy door behind them, the small chamber lit with emergency lights. Security monitors flickered to life, showing multiple angles of the penthouse. In one corner stood a weapons cabinet. Harper placed Wyatt in the safest corner she could find. "Stay here. Don't move. I'll protect you." She opened the cabinet and took out a 9mm like the one she had trained with. Her hands trembled, but she remembered Raff's lessons. Check the magazine. Chamber around. Stance. Aim. Fire. On the screens, she watched chaos unfold. Raff's guards fought back but were overwhelmed. One by one they fell. Enzo Benedetto strode among his men, his face lit with the twisted joy of a hunter closing in. He kicked the body of a fallen guard and laughed. "Search every room," he barked. "The kid has to be here. Find him." Harper tightened her grip on the gun, eyes locked on the monitors. She saw them moving closer, clearing rooms, advancing toward the panic room. Her heart pounded like war drums. Footsteps stopped just outside the steel door. Wyatt clung to her, face buried against her chest, his small body shaking uncontrollably. Harper raised the gun and aimed at the entrance, her hands no longer trembling. "If anyone comes through that door," she whispered, "I will shoot." A knock sounded against the steel, then a familiar voice. "Harper, open up. It's clear." We pushed them back. She glanced at the monitor and her heart nearly stopped. Standing outside was Pierce Morrison, Raff's second in command, a man Conrad trusted. But directly behind him were 2 unfamiliar men. And further back, smiling with triumphant satisfaction, stood Enzo Benedetto. Harper stepped back from the security monitor, the blood in her veins turning to ice. No, it couldn't be. Pierce Morrison, the man she had seen dozens of times in the penthouse, the man who nodded politely to her each morning, the man Conrad trusted to help guard the Corsetti family. He was the traitor. He stood beside Enzo Benedetto as if they had long been allies. "Harper." Pierce's voice carried through the steel door, warm and reassuring enough that if she had not seen the screen, she might have opened it without hesitation. "Open the door. It's clear now. I'll get you and Wyatt out." Then she heard the sound that nearly stopped her heart, the faint electronic beep of a keypad. Pierce was entering the code from outside the panic room. He knew it. Of course he knew it. He was second in command. He was trusted with everything. Harper moved in a single breath. She pulled Wyatt to the farthest corner of the room and pushed him behind a heavy steel cabinet. "Stay here. Don't come out until I tell you. Do you understand?" Her voice was firm even as terror tore through her chest. Wyatt's cheeks were wet with tears, but he nodded. Though he was only 4 years old, he understood that this was life or death. Harper straightened and turned toward the door, lifting the gun the way Raph had taught her. Solid stance, steady breath, aim, ready. The steel door swung open. Pierce entered first, his weapon aimed directly at her. The false friendliness was gone from his face, replaced by the blank chill of a killer. "Put the gun down, Harper. Don't do anything stupid." Enzo Benedetto stepped in behind him. His smile stretched so wide it seemed almost to split his handsome face. "Brave little waitress," he mocked. "I heard you embarrassed my father at the party, but the game's over now. Hand over the kid." Harper didn't move. Her gun remained trained on Pierce. "Over my dead body." Pierce smirked. "If that's what you want." He raised his weapon and tightened his finger on the trigger. Harper closed her eyes, bracing for the impact. The shot exploded, but no pain came. She opened her eyes to see Pierce staggering backward, blood pouring from his shoulder, his gun clattering to the floor. Standing in the doorway, smoke curling from his weapon, was Conrad. "Nobody touches her," Conrad roared, fury and betrayal lacing his voice. "You, Pierce. I trusted you. I brought you into this family." Pierce gave a strained laugh through the pain. "Benedetto pays more, Con. Don't take it personal." Conrad lunged at Enzo. The two men collided like charging bulls, crashing to the floor in a violent struggle. They struck and grappled, fighting for control of their weapons. Conrad was stronger, seasoned by years of survival. He forced Enzo down, his hand clamping around the younger man's throat. "Run, Harper," Conrad shouted through clenched teeth. "Elevator, now." Harper didn't hesitate. She rushed to Wyatt, pulled him from his hiding place, gathered him into her arms, and ran. She ran past the open panic room, past bodies of guards and attackers sprawled across the marble floor, past shattered glass and streaks of blood on white walls. Wyatt sobbed against her shoulder, but she couldn't stop. The elevator was at the end of the corridor, 10 meters, 8, 5. A figure stepped from the shadows and blocked her path. Harper stopped as if she had hit an invisible wall. Salvatore Benedetto stood before her, a pistol leveled at her face. He was not at his Long Island estate as Raph had believed. He was here, in the Corsetti penthouse, to finish this himself. "Going somewhere, little waitress?" Sal asked, his voice sweet as poisoned honey. "The party's just beginning." Harper held Wyatt tighter, shielding him with her body. She still gripped her gun behind his small frame, but she couldn't raise it. Sal's weapon was already aimed. If she moved, he would shoot. "Corsetti thinks he's clever," Sal continued, stepping closer. "Attacking my house. I was ready for that. The estate was nothing but bait, a hollow shell with a few fools left behind. While he fights ghosts, I'm here taking what he loves most." "What do you want?" Harper asked, forcing calm into her voice. She needed time. She needed him talking. "I want Corsetti to suffer," Sal said, his narrow eyes burning with a hatred that had smoldered for years. "The way I suffered. Do you know what I lost? My eldest son, Marco. He died 10 years ago in a failed deal. A deal Corsetti sabotaged. He was 23. He was the future of the Benedetto family, and Corsetti killed him." Harper saw genuine pain beneath the fury, but she also saw madness, the distortion of a father who had let grief twist him into something monstrous. "I waited 10 years, Sal went on, his voice trembling with emotion, waiting for the perfect moment. "Now I'll take his son. Let him feel what it's like to lose what matters most." He moved the gun toward Wyatt, who trembled behind Harper. "He's innocent," Harper pleaded, despite hating the desperation in her tone. "He's just 4 years old. He has nothing to do with your war." "My son had nothing to do with the wars between families either," Sal replied coldly. "But he died anyway. An eye for an eye. That's the law of this world." There was nowhere to run, a dead end behind her, Sal and his gun in front of her. She tightened her grip on her hidden weapon, knowing that if she lifted it, Sal would shoot Wyatt first. She needed a distraction. She needed a miracle. Harper looked straight into Sal's narrow eyes and did the only thing she could do. She spoke. "You think killing a child will ease your pain." Her voice was steadier than the chaos unraveling inside her. Sal paused, suspicion tightening his gaze. "What did you say?" "I'm asking you," Harper continued, choosing every word with care. "Your son Marco, if he were alive, what would he think if he saw his father murder a 4-year-old boy? An innocent child who has nothing to do with a war between grown men." "Shut up," Sal roared, yet something flickered in his eyes. You say you loved your son, Harper pressed on. You say you've lived in agony for 10 years because you lost him. But if you kill Wyatt, you become the very thing you hate. A man who kills another man's child. A man who forces another father to endure the same pain you've carried. I said, "Shut up," Sal shouted, stepping closer, the gun trembling in his hand. You know nothing about my pain. You know nothing about losing a son. Harper moved back a single step, still shielding Wyatt with her body, but she saw the opening. Sal was unraveling. A man who loses control makes mistakes. I know what it's like to lose a sister, she said, her tone softening. Meredith died giving birth to Wyatt. She was everything to me. For 4 years I raised her son alone, no help, no one beside me. I know grief. But I didn't turn that grief into an excuse to destroy someone else. Sal's jaw clenched, veins rising along his neck, his face flushed with fury. You compare your sister to my son. You dare, the elevator chimed. The doors flew open, and Raph stormed out like a wounded beast unleashed, gun in hand, face carved from rage, eyes burning with a fire Harper had never seen before. Sal, Raph thundered. Sal turned. It was the distraction Harper had prayed for. But before she could move, Sal swung his weapon toward Raph. Drop the gun, Raph said, his voice ice cold despite the storm inside him. Your men are dead. Enzo's in custody. It's over, Sal. Sal laughed, a cracked, manic sound echoing through the ruined corridor. Over. I have nothing left to lose, Corsetti. My son is dead. My family is finished. You took everything from me. He pivoted the gun toward Wyatt, who sobbed behind Harper. But you still have something to lose, and I'm going to take it. Let you feel it. Time slowed to a crawl. Harper saw Sal's finger tighten on the trigger. She saw Raph lifting his weapon, but too far away, the angle wrong. She saw Wyatt crying behind her, a 4-year-old child about to die for a war he never chose. 1 second. One choice. One chance. Harper didn't think. She acted. The gun hidden behind her back, the one she had taken from the panic room, the one she had learned to fire in a single afternoon. She raised it. She aimed as Raph had taught her. Feet shoulder-width apart, right hand firm, left hand steady beneath, right eye aligned, slow pressure on the trigger. She fired. The first shot struck Sal in the chest. The second followed. Then the third. The recoil jolted her wrist with searing pain, but she kept firing until the weapon clicked empty. Sal looked down at his chest where 3 dark blossoms spread through white fabric. Shock washed over his face, pure disbelief. You, he whispered, blood spilling from the corner of his mouth. The waitress. He collapsed to his knees, then fell forward onto the marble floor. His gun slid away. His narrow eyes stared upward, lifeless. Silence fell. Harper stood frozen, arms extended, the empty gun trembling in her hands. She had killed a man. Harper Calloway, the waitress from a cheap diner in Queens, had taken a life. She saw the blood, the body, the hollow eyes. Her knees buckled. Raph caught her before she fell. Harper, look at me. Are you hurt? She stared at him, shock hollowing her voice. I killed him. I shot him and he's dead. Raph cradled her face, forcing her to meet his gaze. You saved Wyatt. You saved my son. You saved us. I killed someone, she repeated as tears streamed down her cheeks. I'm a killer. You're a mother protecting her child, Raph said firmly. There's nothing wrong with that, Aunt Harper. Wyatt's small voice broke through the haze. Harper turned and saw him standing near the wall, tear-streaked but safe. He ran into her arms. She dropped the empty gun and sank to her knees, clutching him, sobbing uncontrollably, kissing his hair again and again. You're safe. You're safe, sweetheart. I'm here. I'll always be here. You beat the monster, Wyatt said, awe trembling in his voice. You're so strong. You're a superhero. Yes, baby, she whispered through tears. The monster's gone. Raph knelt beside them and wrapped his arms around both of them. The 3 of them held each other in the wrecked hallway amid shattered glass and blood and the distant wail of sirens. None of it mattered. There was only this. Family. Dad, Wyatt said, looking up at Raph. Aunt Harper's strong, right. Raph met Harper's eyes, his own wet with emotion she had never imagined seeing. She's the strongest person I've ever known. Stronger than me. Harper understood then that something inside her had shifted forever. She was no longer the frightened waitress running from life. She was no longer waiting to be saved. She was a fighter, a mother who would kill to protect her child. She was family. Raf pressed a tender kiss to her forehead. It's over. Truly over. We're okay, she asked, her voice still trembling. We're family, Raf said, holding them both tight. We're more than okay. The sirens drew closer, but in Raf's world, the police were never the real danger. They would be handled, as everything else always was. The only true threat lay motionless on the marble floor, narrow eyes staring into nothing. And Harper, the waitress from Queens, had been the one to end him. 3 months after that fateful night, the Corsetti estate in the Hamptons overflowed with white flowers and golden sunset light. This wasn't a Mafia gathering filled with calculating eyes and brittle smiles. This was a celebration of life, of love, of family. The guests were the heads of the 4 remaining families, men who had witnessed the fall of the Benedetto Empire and now stood here to offer their blessings to the most powerful man in New York. Harper stood in the dressing room, gazing at her reflection and barely recognizing the woman staring back. The ivory wedding gown embraced her figure with quiet elegance, not the glittering fantasy of a fairy tale princess, but the refined strength of a queen who knew her own power. There was no trace left of the exhausted waitress with dark circles under her eyes and calloused hands. The woman in the mirror was steady, confident, and had once taken a life to protect her family. The door opened and Wyatt burst in, dressed in a small silver-gray suit, his dark curls neatly combed. "Mom," he called, and Harper's heart melted at the sound. "You look so beautiful. You look like a princess." Harper knelt and wrapped him in her arms. "And you are my brave prince." They stepped onto the white aisle together, Wyatt holding her hand proudly, as though he were the most important best man in the world. At the end of the aisle, Raf waited in a flawless black suit, yet it wasn't his appearance that stole Harper's breath. It was his eyes. The gray eyes that had once been cold as steel were now warm, gentle, filled with love. When she reached him, he took her hand, and she felt the faint tremor in his fingers. Their vows weren't borrowed words from a book. "I, Rafferty Corsetti, take this woman as my wife," Raf said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Not because she needs my protection. She's proven she can protect herself. But because she taught me how to love again. After so many years in darkness, she became the light that led me home." Harper swallowed her tears and answered, "I, Harper Calloway, take this man as my husband. Not because of what he owns. Money and power mean nothing to me, but because of who he's becoming. A good father, a better man with each passing day. And because he looks at our son with eyes full of love." "I do," Raf said. "I do," Harper answered. They kissed, and applause rose like waves against the shore. After the ceremony, Wyatt ran to them and wrapped his arms around both. "So Aunt Harper is really my mom now, Dad." Harper knelt again, tears of joy sliding down her cheeks. "I've always been your mother, Wyatt. From the very first day I held you in my arms. So I have a dad and a mom," Wyatt shouted, his face glowing with happiness. Raf gathered them close. "That's right. This is our family. Forever." When the celebration faded and the guests drifted away, Raf led Harper down to the beach. The sun had surrendered to night, and a full moon shimmered over the water like 1,000 scattered diamonds. From his pocket, he pulled out something that made Harper's chest tighten, the old black Motorola phone, the one that had started everything. "You don't need this anymore," Raf said. "You don't need leverage. You don't need insurance. You own me already, Harper. You and Wyatt are everything I have." Harper held the phone, her fingers brushing the worn plastic surface. She remembered the night she had sat on the floor of that crumbling apartment, desperate enough to call the devil himself. She looked out at the sea and whispered softly, "Meredith, I kept my promise. Wyatt is safe. Wyatt is happy. I'm sorry I couldn't save you, but I'll live enough for both of us." She threw the phone into the ocean. It arced into the moonlit sky, spinning once before disappearing beneath the waves. The past sank into the dark water. The future waited. Raf wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "So, Mrs. Corsetti, where would you like to go for our honeymoon?" Harper turned, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "I was thinking Disney World." "Wyatt wants to meet Mickey Mouse." Raf groaned softly. "Mickey Mouse. The only one I can't intimidate." Harper pulled him down for a kiss. You'd better get used to it, husband. And they laughed. For the first time in their lives, they laughed freely, without fear, without shadows, with nothing but pure joy between them. That was the story of the fateful call that changed the history of New York's underworld. Harper Calloway didn't just save her nephew that night. She saved Rafferty Corsetti from the darkness within himself. From an exhausted waitress living in a crumbling apartment with $4,000 in debt and no way out, she became a queen standing beside the most powerful man in the city. She proved that sometimes a mother's love is the most dangerous weapon in the world, and if you threaten her child, she won't hesitate. This story leaves us with truths worth carrying. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes family is who chooses to love and protect you. In the deepest moments of despair, people can discover strength they never knew they possessed. True love can thaw even the coldest heart, just as Harper melted the ice in Raph's eyes. And never underestimate someone because of where they come from. The poorest waitress in the room may turn out to be the strongest. Dear audience, how did this story make you feel? Did it stir something in your heart? Have you ever lived through a moment when love for your family gave you the strength to endure what seemed impossible? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We would truly love to hear the stories that live in your heart. If this story moved you, please press like and share it with those you love. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next story. We wish each of you good health, a joyful life, and days filled with love and peace. Thank you for walking this journey with us. Goodbye, and we'll see you in the next video.